Hi everyone, welcome to our another episode of PMP Exam Prep Power Hour. This is episode number 26, and as usual we'll focus on one particular topic and followed by a lot of questions related to your PMP certification. I'm your host Saket Bansal. I'm project manager, agile education trainer, and in this session my objective is to talk about your PMP exam preparation and try to clarify some of the doubts which you may have related to your project management topics or PMP preparation. So as usual, we will start with a focus topic. Today our topic is something around change. So we'll focus on learning change control and aspects of change control in our project management as well as in our PMP. So that's something we will focus. Yeah, I just clicked something and it started giving me the audio back. So I can see my audio is working well on YouTube. I can see it is going in a LinkedIn, and I think we can get started. Yeah. So thank you everyone, whoever has joined in, for joining again with us in our PMP exam prep power hour. So let's talk about change control. What I personally see is when people start preparing for PMP exam, a lot of confusion, time goes in understanding, should I raise this as a change request? Should I focus on change control for each and everything? If I want to change in our project plan, do I need to raise a change request? If I want to change communication plan, do I need to raise a change request? So that kind of frequent questions we see in the community. So today I thought, why not to talk about this whole change request and change control topic, and probably it helps you in understanding this particular topic in a better manner. Now, starting with, why should we care or why should have a change control? Now, many times you think that change control is a little bit bureaucratic process, it's an unnecessary process. Why, as a project manager, if I want to change something, I need to raise a change request, take approval from people. Why can't I just go ahead and change it? So say this process is not designed to create trouble for project manager. Yeah, that's the not at all an objective. But the objective is keeping the stakeholder aligned towards the project objectives. So say, especially when you are talking about PMP exam, you might be working in the environment where you have 100 plus stakeholders. You may have 100 plus people, teams. And someone may get a bright idea, which may look bright to some group, but may not be effective, feasible for the whole project. You have done some kind of feasibility analysis and you started working on the project. So you want to make sure that our stakeholders are aligned towards what we wanted to modify based on our previous understanding and why we want to modify that. And if we modify it, what kind of benefits we can expect. And stakeholders are saying, let's go ahead with it. So I want to make sure that we do an integrated impact evaluation of anything which is getting proposed. We ensure that this proposed thing is positively impacting the project objectives. We ensure that stakeholder perception toward this particular change is something is common. They are in agreement with it. I may not necessarily talk to each and every stakeholder, those stakeholders who are putting more stake in the project. So you can simply say the people who are putting their own money in this particular project, those people should be in agreement with this particular change. Now, I, as a project manager, my role is to aligning everyone, making people agree on a common objective and ensuring that we are achieving project objective. That's the goal. And that's the goal of change control as well. And that's why I follow a change control process. Now, after understanding that, we can say, okay, do I need to follow change for each and everything which I want to change in our project? The answer is no. So say changes are happening every day, every hour in your project. You may have a plan to start your work at 9 a.m., but something may happen and you may want to start at 11 a.m. You wanted to finish something today, but you have some challenge happening. You may want to finish it tomorrow. Whenever you start with your project schedule, your schedule start getting updates as soon as we start doing some actual work. Now, do I need to take approval from my stakeholders, alignment with my stakeholder that this person wanted to do this job today, but he's taking leave, he will do tomorrow? Do I need to communicate all this to my stakeholders? The answer is most likely no. So it's like a balancing act. The stakeholder has given me some boundaries, some area to play, and they want me and my project team to achieve the project objective by considering that particular resources and the guideline which they have provided to me. And if something is going beyond the agreement which we have between project team and the stakeholder, that requires intervention from the stakeholders. So we need to define the type of changes, the level of modification in our agreement, which requires understanding and discussion with the stakeholders, and type of changes which we as a decentralized decision maker, our team is empowered to continue with it because our stakeholders trust us and they don't want to get disturbed because of these small issues. So we need to define what kind of changes required change control. Now, where you define it? In our project management work, we start with defining our change control plan. Now, sometimes people ask me, if I want to do this, should I raise a change request or not? The answer is, it depends upon your change control plan. How you have agreed with your stakeholders that what particular stage the changes requires change request and what particular type of changes does not require change request. That I need to put in a change control plan. I probably also need to talk about what kind of changes may require approval level 1 and what kind of changes will go for next level approval. So each change may not require a same set of individuals to evaluate it. So we can have multiple layer of or multiple levels of change control board or a change definition things. And that kind of thing is also defined in my change management plan. So change management plan defines and give a characteristics of change which requires change control. It also defines the authority or the body who will be taking decisions on approving or rejecting the change. It may also categorize the change, and based on the category of change, you may have a different kind of group who will evaluate that particular change. The change control plan also talks about the artifacts, the documentation, the flow you are expected to use to take care of changes. So you want to keep them in stakeholder agreement. So you may have agreement on this particular document I need to fill. This is the steps I need to take. That is also defined in your change control plan. So exactly your project should have your own customized change control plan, but you can take reference from your organization process, your lesson learned to start with a particular change control plan. Now, sometimes there is a practical difficulty in it. So you are facing a PMP exam question and there is no clarity about change control plan, and there is a possibility of raising change request, and there is an option which may say don't raise a change request. And me as a test taker get confused, the clue is not coming, what should I do? So say in general, especially when you are talking about PMP exam, the changes which are impacting your overall stakeholder agreement. In general, you can say in a predictive life cycle, the changes which are impacting baselines are most likely to go through a change control process. So you can easily go with that particular judgment if that clarity is not coming out of the question. Another thing is that the changes which has impact on external commitment may not be a baseline. So say you have forecasted a release date, you have forecasted some vendor integration, something like that. And those things are expected to get impacted because of event or something has happened in your project. Then also you most likely to follow a formal change control process, most likely. But exactly depending upon your complexity of your change, you need to define in your change control plan. I may have a 3-month duration project and I may have a 3-year long duration project. For a 3-month duration project, I may not have many change triggers, and my stakeholder may give me full freedom because they know anything can go wrong, will not go wrong beyond 3 months. So they may let me do a lot of things myself. In a long duration 3-year project, they may give me more guidance and more constraints, and probably I need to take more agreement before I go ahead with the change. So yes, depending upon project and its nature, its characteristics, the amount at stake, the type of contract we are in, the unique change control process will come out, but I will define it as a part of my change control plan. So you put a change control plan in your project management plan, and that guides you in doing how do you take care of the changes. Now, taking it forward, there are a few more ideas before we can conclude this topic and take your questions related to change or other topic of your PMP. Now, this is again one of the frequent confusion I get: change control versus contract change, or change request versus contract change request. Now, many times when we work as a project manager, for us change request means we put the change request to our customer or our clients, and we ask them to give us more money, more time, and if they approve it, we get it. If they don't approve it, we don't get it. Yeah, something like that. So most of the time as a project manager, I think the change request means I need to send something to the customer. So for a PMP exam perspective, you can say there could be internal project planning which is going through a change, and that particular change may have an impact on contract, may not have an impact on contract also. So say you have a challenge in your manpower. Say you had a 10 people team, 2 people left the project. Now you need to find out replacement, and because of that you may have an impact on your milestones also. So you need to propose some alternatives to your stakeholder and says, this is the situation, this is how we possibly can deal with it. And you are putting a change request to analyze that should you hire 3 people or should you wait for 2 months and just go with 2 people only, and probably you need to shift your delivery dates. That agreement is needed, and that agreement with respective stakeholder may come as a change request process in an internal case. Now, if the project is given to you as a fixed price contract, your customer may not be bothered about it. They probably just want to get an update if there is a significant change in the milestone, but it's a more internal matter to you. But still, for a project manager, we need to handle it for the objective of stakeholder alignment, internal stakeholder alignment as a change request. Now, there is a possibility you had a particular scope of work which is agreed by the customer and you got it as a statement of work as a part of a contract. And now because of some regulatory change or customer wants to get some modification done and they tell you the modification, that is also a change request. But this particular change request probably will result into more money to your company or kind of more impact analysis which has to be approved by the customers. Now, it is a change request, but it is going to the customer also. Now, what kind of change request goes to the customer? It depends upon if you are doing contract-driven project between your project and your customer, you must have a contractual understanding. So if the work which is coming here is going beyond our contractual understanding, or if those kind of things are defined as a change in our contract, then we will go for contract change. Yeah. So we will say we will request for additional money, we will request for additional timelines. Those things may also be needed. But for PMP exam, I can't assume all projects are contract-driven projects. I can have a strategic projects also where I may not have an external customer. I might be doing for my internal customers as well. There also I manage my stakeholder for the change. And if there is an external customer and if some changes are triggering to that particular contract, I need to take care of contract change probably as a separate request. And I have an internal change request, I have an external contract management change request, and then we need to ensure that they both are aligned. Now, similar thing can happen when you have given outsource of some work to a vendor and your change may be triggering vendor's work change. There also you need to go through the contract between you and the vendor, and you need to follow the guidelines as defined in the contract to get the change executed. So yes, your changes can reach to an external level, but there are changes which might stick to your internal boundaries, which also need to be taken care. So hopefully this makes you clear and not to worry about your usual change requests, which are always related to organizations asking for more money and approaching your customers. Now, how do you manage change request? It is something like, do you record it? Do you have approval process? What is the flow of it? So first is, whenever something new comes, you as a project manager, you always listen to the new ideas. So say, nobody is saying that you need to avoid all the changes. Yeah? We are in our project management always looking for maximizing opportunities and minimizing threats. And as the environment is changing, we may see some opportunities, we may see some threats, and because of that, we need to adapt and find out some modification in our plan. So yes, as a project manager, I keep looking at these opportunities. I can propose a change request myself also where I see a big opportunity to make stakeholder agree to something. And my stakeholder may also find out some new idea. We may have a challenge in our deliveries. We may have a future risk, which may trigger a change request. So whenever such situation comes, I need to evaluate first level assessment as a project manager. I need to do, is this something which requires our stakeholder approval, agreement, alignment? Because if you don't do it, it can result into more confusion. If the answer comes yes, which is as per your change control plan, then you initiate a change request process. You can say, okay, let me initiate a change request, put some ideas there, invite some of the experts to put their assessment there. And when we have a proper assessment done, we will if we will identify at which level of the board it has to be presented, and then we will present it to our change control board. So change control board is a group of key stakeholders who are expected to take a call on that particular change request. So depending upon the nature and severity of change, we may have a different kind of change control board as defined in our change control plan. So I will put the after collecting impact analysis, I may not do it myself, I may involve subject matter experts, and we put it in front of our change control board. Now, change control board may do it as a on-demand basis. So as soon as a change request comes, they come together and review it. That's a possibility. Or they may conduct weekly, monthly meetings where they come and review it. I'm talking more about predictive lifecycle right now. So you can say there will be a process where they will come together, say monthly meeting of change control as an example, and they evaluate all the change requests which are there, and they decide what they want to do with it. They probably want to approve it. They probably want to say partial approval. They may want to say that this is good idea, but let's do it in the next project. They may just say, don't think about it, let's reject the idea. They may reject it, or they may say, let's discuss it next month again. Looks like as of now, we are finding difficult to decide about it. So there could be various decisions can be taken. Usually for simplicity's sake, we only think about acceptance and rejection, but there could be other decisions also can be taken. Now, once that decision is taken, it will communicate it to you as a project manager, or you are part of that particular discussion, and then you take it forward, you communicate respective stakeholders about it, and you update the change. Based on the change, you update your project management plan, the current schedules, the costing, the resource planning, you update it because you need to incorporate this change to get it executed. And that's how the whole change request process will follow. Now, in a predictive life cycle, will this change approval always impacts the baseline? That is also not clear. It depends. So there could be some changes where stakeholder will say, let's do it, but we don't want to change our performance baselines. If things are going off track, we want to track it as a variance. Then they are approving the change without approving the change in the baseline. If they realize that it is no use of tracking the old baselines, since we have shifted our focus significantly, they may say, let's put a new benchmark for our future project tracking. Let's approve the change request along with changing the baseline. So that is also depends. It is not for sure that each change will be changed. Each change request approval will be changing the baseline. Yeah. So that's another point we need to keep in mind. Now, most of this conversation which I did was generic, but basically I was taking an example of predictive life cycle. That's the idea. Now, somebody will say how a different project environment, especially when we work in the agile or hybrid manner, do we have this whole process needed? And some of you will say, in agile, we don't have a change control. So see, our objective of stakeholder alignment, our objective of that people are looking to a common purpose, that remains the same irrespective of life cycle. Now, in the adaptive way of working, or when we have more probability of change, you may have some percentage of adaptability as a hybrid, we expect such kind of events happening very frequently. Rather than once in a month, you may say maybe once in a week, or once in 2-3 times in a week, we have some great ideas. So we want to have a more easy dynamic process to bring the stakeholder to an agreement, and then we move forward. So in the agile way of working, usually we assume, or we expect our powerful stakeholders who are expected to evaluate should we do it or not, should be part of our day-to-day review or day-to-day engagement. And especially we talk about backlog refinement, and at the end, iteration review, sprint review. So whenever we are finishing a sprint or an iteration, that's the same word, two different word for the same thing, time box. We are reviewing what we have achieved till now. That point in time, stakeholders who are expected to be decision maker, who are expected to be thinking about future, they are part of that particular review meeting, and they can review if we need to change some direction afterwards. So that's a good event. This event may get extended in the form of meeting or in the form of continuous discussion as a backlog refinement session, where we assume all these important, powerful people are available, and they are making a decision, should we go ahead or not with this particular change. So by default, we assume the high power, high interest stakeholder, usually called product owner, will ensure the stakeholder alignment on a regular basis. And since this is expected to happen more frequently, we expect stakeholders engaged more frequently. And the product owner takes an accountability of ensuring alignment in the stakeholders for the new discoveries which we are making, because it is expected to happen more frequently. So you may not necessarily have a different documentation process to do it, because it is more individual and interaction oriented. You can say we will talk more and finalize should we change or not change. Yeah. So, but intent is same. Intent is that we need to have a clarity about where we are heading. We should not be getting confused that in the agile way of working, team may do something and stakeholder may keep dreaming something else, and we are in a total confusion. So that should not be the interpretation of not having a change control board. You can say change control board kind of powerful stakeholders are part of iteration review and backlog refinement, and they are doing those decisions on a very frequent basis, and we don't necessarily need to have a separate artifact based process in the case of adaptive life cycle. Now, if I'm following hybrid approach, can I say that it will never be a change control board and we may not have a change control process separately? So we can't rule out. So we can say there is a possibility we may define as our change control plan that a certain type of changes will be taken in care in the backlog refinement and iteration review discussions only. But if something goes beyond a certain level, maybe the cost impact is high, we may want to revisit the feasibility of continuing. So there is a possibility some high stakeholder, high power, high interest stakeholder may get involved if the change impact goes beyond threshold level. So even in the hybrid approach, because Agile does not define all these things, so we will call it hybrid whenever we are using the practical approach for a given project. But for a PMP exam, we can assume that most of the changes will be taken care as a part of backlog refinement and iteration review. But there is a possibility if there are something, the question gives me a clue that I can have a change control board also to take a high level decisions about the changes. So that's what I wanted to talk about today related to change. If you have a follow-up question starting with the change, we can do that. Else, if you have any other question, we can start with that as well. I hope all of you can hear me. Yes, I can see many of you are here. Great. Yeah. So anything, if you have to discuss related to your PMP exam, you can put it in a chat. So process is simple. If you are watching me on LinkedIn, there only you can put a comment. It will reach me as a question or as a comment also. I will read it out if you want to make a comment. That's also welcome. It's not expected to be just questions. You put your insight as well. That might be a useful thing. And if you are watching it in YouTube, then also you can put it in the YouTube comments. The live chat, yeah, that right side thing, which you might be seeing in your live chat section. So I take a pause and see. So we have a question. Would you please repeat the point of change request in Agile approach? So the summary of Agile is a planned change driven approach. We are expecting that our requirements will evolve significantly because we don't have a clarity about what we want to do. And since it is planned change approach, we want to have ability to review our understanding and adapt our understanding more flexible. Yeah, that's the reason. But at the same time, we want to make sure the stakeholders and the team are aligned towards a common purpose. There should not be a misalignment. That is also an objective. So with this objective, the Agile way of working promotes continuous interaction between the people who has high stake, which means who are putting their money, who has a business understanding. So in our PMP language, we can say high power, high interest stakeholders, and the people who are executing the work, development team, project team, you can say it. So they should be very frequently interacting because they have to respond to the new discoveries. Now, keeping that in mind, we probably don't need a documentation process, an impact analysis process, and a little step-by-step process, because that might be slow. Yeah, because it is good if we have a frequency of change is less, but if we are planning lots of frequency of change, then we need to have a little dynamic process. In a predictive life cycle, we can say we have a baseline and we assume baseline will work 80% of the time as it is, 20% changes can happen, and for that we can take a little sequential process. Now with that mindset, we can say that in Agile way of working, at the end of every iteration, we review what we have learned and we define how should we move forward with it. So we have a open discussion between the high power, high interest stakeholder and the project team. So that's a kind of equivalent to your change control or equivalent to finding out how should we respond to going situation. Then extension of that is a backlog refinement activity led by a person who is expected to have better understanding about stakeholder and alignment. Usually we call that role as a product owner. So someone, customer, product owner who is taking that accountability ensures that he works with other set of stakeholders to ensure we align our input work, by way of prioritizing, adding more item, removing more item as a part of backlog refinement on a regular basis. So we probably don't need a separate documented process for change control. That's the most likely to happen. But there could be a deviation where you have a mixed mode approach and you can say certain amount of changes will go in this manner only. But for something, say you want to extend the project duration by 100%. You initially thought of running for 1 year, now you want to run for 2 years. So for that, you need to take an approval of allocation of funding or people for another 1 year. So those kind of things may require a group review, and that group review can be considered as a small change control board. So you can say some changes can go there, but most of the changes are taken care as a backlog refinement session. That's a hybrid approach. So if you see a pure question, agile related, you can say I will use backlog refinement iteration review and I don't need a separate change control process. If it is a mixed mode question, then I can say for majority of things, backlog refinement and iteration review will be good enough. But for some, I may need to go to change control board, and which I can define in my change control plan. So, so that's the idea. So in the adaptive, what if the change is functionality is impacting the end state release timeline? So say, be it adaptive, be it predictive, any change can impact your release timeline. Any change can delay that. But you want to make sure you are doing it if it makes sense for your business. It makes sense for your customers. They want it. And you want to make sure they are involved in that decision making. It should not happen that you made it and now it is 2 months delayed and customer is saying, guys, you never told us. You started doing this change yourself and now we are in a mess. So irrespective of life cycle, that should not happen. So don't assume in a predictive life cycle we are against change. The idea is it should be agreed upon. That's the only thing. So even in an adaptive life cycle, the question is primarily about it. We work with our high power, high interest stakeholder. They bring an idea. We show that if you implement this idea, it is going to shift our release dates by 2 months, by 1 month. That's a forecast. And does it make sense? They says, yes, it makes sense. Perfectly makes sense. I go with it. That's it. So the same thing happens in a predictive also, but you can say that's a change request flow. But here you have a backlog refinement flow. The decision making is fast because people are available to you then and there. I keep telling in my PMP class, for a PMP exam, even the question indicates you are in a last day of the project, irrespective of life cycle. And someone come up with a change and says, you can't release it. You need to wait for another 1 month and do this activity. And question says, it's too late. Let's finish it. You can't say that. You need to see that, yes, you have an idea. I probably want to review it. It doesn't mean that you will follow that idea, but you need to listen to the idea, involve the right stakeholder. This guy is raising this risk. What do you think about it? They may say, yes, it's a very valid risk. Let's do this. We do it. Or the stakeholder will say, we listen to this person. We understand the impact, but I think it doesn't has that much business case to hold in for another month. Let's do it. Let's release it and we'll see it in a next project or sometime later. We do that. So my role is not to block changes, not to avoid changes. I'm always looking as a project manager to achieve project objectives. I'm here to maximize project benefits, but at the same time, I don't want to let the changes happen under the carpet. So in a predictive life cycle, I follow a change control process to make it visible and evaluatable. In adaptive life cycle, we follow a backlog refinement and we follow the iteration review to make sure it is not hidden. We all are discussing it together. You are here, you are looking at the demo, I'm projecting the impact, and that's how we go with it. That's it. So it's a simple thing, not to too much get carried away between life cycles. First start with the objective and then we apply it appropriately. Okay. So what documents I need to create for the change control, or can I use Confluence? Exact need of documentation will be driven by your organizational recommendation. It will be a factor of complexity of your project also. Now, in case of adaptive life cycle, I may not have any document. I can just focus on individual and interaction also. We can have a conversation and we can decide it. But even in the adaptive life cycle, if my teams are spread across the globe and we have complex stakeholder interaction, then I need to agree upon where do we put this information, where we put our analysis, and where we have a comment about it. So depending upon our systems in use, yes, if you are using Confluence, there is a possibility you create a Confluence page about a change request. You may have a whole structure for that. That's a possibility. Or even for future backlog refinement stage, you may identify new features, new ideas as somewhere as a Confluence or directly in a Jira ticket, depends upon that. And then you review them. By default, in the Agile way of working, new backlog items can be directly added in the backlog. You don't necessarily have to add Confluence page first and then add the backlog item. But if the complexity is more, the logics are complex, then you may add a Confluence page before you, along with your backlog item, depending upon the situation at hand. In a adaptive lifecycle, adding the item in a backlog doesn't mean it will get done. Yeah? So it is still a candidate for review in a backlog refinement meeting. So usually in the adaptive lifecycle, we promote, if you get an idea, if you want to change something, why don't you put into a backlog? And in our upcoming backlog refinement, we will decide, do we want to drop it, or we want to prioritize it, or we want to think about it in the next iteration. Yeah? So we can do that particular interaction as well. So there could be multiple ways, but this is by default, Agile will say, just put it in the backlog and we can review it. But somewhere we need to create a common understanding. Yeah. So that's the thing. Okay, so we spoke about change. We looked into Agile and change. I think that's a more confusing topic for project managers. I see that in my classes as well. And yeah, we discussed them here. If you are recently joined in, we have explored some of the ideas of change. So you can watch the recording. Recording is anyway happening as I speak. So you can go back and see the conversation as well. If you have any query related to PMP topic, this topic is just one topic. You can bring queries related to other topics as well. Something which can help you to get faster in your PMP preparation, you can bring that. But yeah, we are talking about change today a little bit more deeply. So we see if we have any question left. I'm just checking if I'm missing something here and there. Looks like all good. Okay. I think my prepared time is done and I have given the idea of change. I pause for a while, see if there are questions, else we close for today. Okay, looks like things are settling down. Yeah. If you are typing something, please put your question soon. Okay. Okay, looks like we are done. More or less, we have covered all the conversations for today, and this topic is also closed. So probably a good time to close today's session if that's the case. I just count the last 30 seconds, and if there is no query, we close our session for today. Okay, so I think we are done, and I see a few people just joining in case they have something else. I just close. Great. So thank you everyone for joining today's session. We'll see you again next Friday with some new topic. I will put that as usual in our LinkedIn as well as YouTube place. You can follow that. I hope some of you are aware, if you are seriously preparing for PMP, we do have a WhatsApp channel. We call it WhatsApp community. You can join that as well. I shared that link sometime back. Can put it here as well. And this is little bit more frequent update space because we close our session and then we move on. But in case someone wants to get little quicker updates, this is another possibility to remain connected. Yeah, so I just put the link for that. You can follow and join our WhatsApp community. It's a more publishing community, so you keep getting announcements of various project management PMP related topic resources or our updates. So that's the one thing you can think about. Yeah. So I pasted the link in a chat. Hopefully you can see it, and we move forward with that. Yes, I can see it's updated now. Great. Thank you everyone for your participation. See you next Friday. Bye for now.